Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Well, the Jewish calendar is always a great deal of fun. It's a creation calendar, meaning that it is based upon the assumption that the creation of the cosmos happened exactly 5,783 years ago. And within that calendar, inside the calendar, traditional scholars have located dates for key events referenced in the book of Genesis. So the Chabad website wants us all to know now that on the equivalent of December 10th in the year 2104 BCE, Noah's Ark first rested atop Mount Ararat. I'll wager that even the best educated of your friends didn't know that. So as our ancestors and their animal companions finally put their seasickness behind them, let's look at today's Sedra, Vayishlach, Genesis 32, verse 4 and following. The word humility has its origin in the Latin word for something that is low or small. In Jewish Musar literature, the term often used to speak about humility is tzimtzum, a term implying that one contracts oneself, one makes oneself less of a presence, smaller. The same word tzimtzum is used by Kabbalists to describe how God contracted the divine self in order to make room for creation. So creation was an act of divine humility. But the classic Jewish statement for declaring that one is small, worthless, and of little note is found early on in this week's Sedra. Countless Jewish leaders have, with great show of public humility, embraced this verse more than any other phrase at a time when they are being singled out for high honors. And they'll say this: Katonti mikol hachasadim. I am unworthy of all of the acts of mercy that I have received in my life. The word katonti, of course, reflects the universal connection between humility and smallness. Katan. In other words, so katonti, katan, the literary equivalent of thumb in Jewish literature is katantan. Right, the little person. Now, Jacob is a torn, conflicted, confused individual. His personal history is filled with multiple acts of deceit, identity theft, plotting revenge, and being a less than praiseworthy father. He is a dutiful son and a cheating son. He is arrogant and fearful. He makes a deal with God that is really pretty far away from being noble. And then, chutzpah, he prays to God for protection. That's our Jacob. And in our Sedra, it is Jacob who utters the classic term for humility, katonti. I'm a nothing, I'm small. Here's the scene. Jacob is returning to Canaan after years of exile. Esau, his aggrieved brother, is coming out to meet Jacob. And Jacob is afraid that Esau really intends to destroy him and his family. So Jacob the arrogant sends a note to Esau pointing out how wealthy and powerful Jacob has become and asking for peace. Jacob the fearful then divides his camp into two so that if Esau attacks one camp, those in the other camp might have a chance to escape. And then Jacob the humble throws himself down before God, proclaiming his unworthiness, begging for divine protection, katonti. I'm a nothing. I'm little. And Jacob, the less than noble, ends his prayer by reminding God that it was God who got him into this mess, and then it's going to fall to God to get him out. There was nothing for Jacob to do now but to wait alone. And then the text describes a scene in which Jacob wrestles with a night visitor and emerges with a new name, Israel, and a determination to confront both his brother and his fate. There are multiple factors that attract me to Jacob. First of all, he is appallingly imperfect. Gotta love it. We read of his life and search endlessly for signs that he is worthy to be counted as one of the avot, the patriarchs of the Jewish people. I have to tell you, those signs of worthiness are hard to find. He is passive when active responses are called for. He is unloved by so many. He was rejected by his own father, and yet he needed to think of himself as being in the direct line of Abraham and Isaac. He seemingly can challenge a representative of God even while he is dramatically uncertain as to what his own personal relationship with God could and should be. He has visions as to what his life might be all about. But good old Jacob, he can't shake the shoddiness of his own behavior. Friends, this is a very human story. And that's kind of why I'm drawn to it. Our texts open up to us the truth that Jacob is well aware of his faults and was actually struggling to grow, to be more than he was, to live a life more worthy of the responsibilities that he now was carrying upon his shoulders. I guess it's another reason why I'm attracted to Jacob. Aware of his flaws, he still wants to grow. When Jacob says, Lo yadati, in one vision, when he says that God is in this place, Lo yadati, but I didn't know that, you can feel the positive excitement generated by this discovery. Wow, God is in this place. During the last minutes of that wrestling match, Jacob begs for a blessing. He has come to understand that he cannot do all that was expected of him without additional support. So he says, Katonti. The cynics among us could properly state that he didn't mean that at all. Katonti, Jacob, nah. That he was once again just trying to manipulate God, but I think that it was far more likely that Jacob was beginning to see himself and his life in a far broader context. Shlomo Riskin tellingly points out that Jacob is starting to understand that he can never develop a successful relationship with God until he begins to more fully understand who he was and what meaning his life had. And the sign that he was finally launching himself on a more integrated, successful, significant path was when the night wrestler gives to Jacob a new name, Yisrael, Israel, the God wrestler. Having learned to wrestle with himself, Jacob is now ready to begin to wrestle with God. Jacob's no stranger to me, and maybe to many of you as well. Okay, he is torn, conflicted, and confused. Okay. And yes, Jacob will never be a saint. But he was determined to grow. He was determined to get his act together. He was determined to become worthy of that birthright, which, by the way, he had stolen. Through pain and failure, error and inadvertence, Jacob had grown. Jacob is no stranger to any of us. And you know what? That should give us great hope. Katonti mikol hachasadim. Yeah, I'm not altogether worthy, but I do feel intimations of arrogance. Nice combination. Shabbat Shalom. Have a great week.